Good morning, good afternoon, good evening around the world. My name is Doug Brunke. I'm the founder and CEO of Global Chamber. The brainchild for this conversation today, which we hope to be a monthly marketing conversation, happened on a very odd day. It happened to be the first day of CES, which MJ I see in the room knows very well because I got to meet him in person for the first time. It was an unusual drive that I had from Los Angeles to Las Vegas. And you may remember and know about the Los Angeles fires. I that morning started. I had not heard about any fires, and apparently they'd already started. But I got out of my house at 4 a.m. to drive to Las Vegas. And as I entered the mountains that are between just outside of Los Angeles, it started to rain incredibly hard. It was just torrential, very windy, tractor trailer trucks knocked over, and my GPS, in fact, told me to get off and get back on at some point, and which I did. I saved an hour in the drive because there was bad accident with trucks knocked over. It was just a very weird day, culminating in an amazing event that Global Chamber did. Uh, and then actually I came back and there were the fires going on and seemed like the end of the world with smoke and fire and like, oh my God. But during that drive, I got to speak with Meg. And the skies opened up. It was a wonderful conversation. We've had Meg speak at Global Chamber before, and she's brilliant. She knows marketing inside and out. And so she can speak on the topic so well. So when we talked on my drive, while all of this other stuff was going on in my head, she cleared the skies. She was very obviously that this was something that we should be doing and have her leading. And so we have at Global Chamber mainly a focus on helping members connect up with clients and making those connections. But we also think it's very important to connect up in all of the key functional areas, whether it's logistics or finance or sales and marketing and all the different accounting, all the different pieces. So you know what to do, you know who to go to when you have a question, and ideally avoid a lot of problems. Meg is great at marketing, so why not go to the best in terms of understanding more about not just the concept of marketing, but how to bring it to your business. How does marketing interweave with your brand? And how do you develop all of that together? And how do you get clients? It's not about like a pretty picture, which a lot of people seem to think marketing is. It's not about a logo or imaging. It's about creating awareness of what your product is to the right people and then driving it all the way through so people buy. And Meg understands that. So, Meg, thank you for tolerating my maybe too long introduction of you. I'll kick it. I'll turn it over to you to take us forward for this 1 hour and really our official kickoff for the monthly marketing conversation. We've had a sales one. We've had a monthly conversations on different regions. We're continuing to add those. I think Jem is working on 10 or more additional monthly conversations that we're having at Global Chamber starting in the next few months. This is one of them. So, Meg, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your expertise, and we look forward to learning more today.
Awesome. Thank you, Doug. I wish Doug was my hype man for every event that I did. I feel like that was like such a nice intro. So thank you. I'm really happy to be here. My name is Meg Seitz, and I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Toth Shop, TOTH Shop. And I have been in the work of marketing, branding, and creative communications professionally for almost 20 years now, but under my own shingle for 10 years. We actually hit our 10-year anniversary yesterday. And what I love about branding and marketing is that it's part science and part humanity. And so for all of my friends out there who love the data and the numbers and being able to track performance, obviously this is a place for you. And for all of my friends who love to have the relationships, the culture, the people, this is also a conversation for you as well. So I hope that we'll be able to have more conversations on a monthly basis. And I'm going to walk you through kind of what the first 6 months will look like in a second. But I just want to check in with Doug and Jem. Do I have screen share? Yes, I do. Yeah, so I'm going to share my screen here. I feel like we might get the matrix for a second. You're probably looking at my email. Don't panic. All right.
Came into the presentation. That's cool.
All right. Can everyone see my presentation?
We can.
Oh, fantastic. All
Hi,
right.
Global Chamber. I love it.
Hi, Global Chamber. I'm glad you're here. So this is a high five for everybody. Let me move this guy up a little bit. We'll see how that goes. All right, so just a little heads up, today's run of show. This is our welcome and introductions time. I'm going to tap Krystal in a hot second to introduce herself. I'm going to talk for about 20 minutes. We're going to talk about some general concepts about branding, actually. So I believe branding's kind of like the foundation to all marketing. So if you don't quite see the connection yet, we'll make the connection for you. And then we're going to have a Q&A with Krystal. Krystal is a marketing branding expert, and she has some wonderful perspective when it comes to strategy of branding, market research, everything that goes into how you create a brand. And then we have some time here for your questions as well. So if you have questions at any point during this run of show, please just jot them down, save them for the last 10 or 15 minutes, and we will go through them together. So as Doug said, this is a new monthly series. And if you caught the name, this will just be a refresher for you. But if you didn't catch the name of the series, it's about building a stronger brand, with the idea of when you choose to build a stronger brand, you're building a stronger business. And obviously, we're going to be talking about branding. We're going to be talking about storytelling, marketing. We're going to be talking a variety of topics, all that lead to how are you having a conversation and how are you developing relationships with your potential clients, but also your current clients as well. So I'm excited you're here, and I want to say thank you to Doug for trusting and just giving us the green light to move forward with this. I really do feel like a lot of times when it comes to branding and marketing, our teams go into tactics so quickly. You know, what are we doing? What's working? What's not working? Post the blog, check the data. And I think sometimes we need to have a place where we can have a little bit of a breather and get some education on just generally what's the strategy. And so that's why I want to start this series with a conversation about branding and thinking about yourself as a bigger brand. So why this matters. So some people, what sometimes happens when we have conversations about branding, and Krystal can talk about this. She has a good story about logos. But sometimes what happens is when we talk about branding, I get some eye rolls. They're like, oh, it's the fluffy stuff. It's the woo-woo stuff. It's the stuff that like we don't really need. And what I want to convince you about is that branding does matter. Branding does play into communications. It plays into relationship building. It plays into marketing. So a couple of quick points here. Branding is going to increase your customer acquisition and your customer loyalty. So they are going to see your brand. They are going to identify that brand with you and your work, and you're more likely to grab the clients and get them under your umbrella, and they're more likely to stay with you if they feel a part of a brand. The second thing is that branding supports premium pricing and how you stand out in the market. So the clearer you are with your marketing, with who you are in your space, the more likely you are to be able to charge more premium pricing because you're going to look like a more solid organization. The third piece here is that branding is also responsible for fueling marketing efficiency and sales. So your sales process, your marketing campaigns, all of those are going to have messaging, they're going to have design, they're going to have strategy. It's all part of your brand experience. And so I want you to think about branding as that foundational fuel that's going to get you to more marketing efficiency, which of course is our goal, to get you to more sales conversions. So a question that comes up a lot of times is, what's the difference between branding and marketing? And the simplest way to define it is branding is about who you are. That can be who you are as a personal brand. It can be who you are as a company or an organization, whether you are for profit or not for profit. It's your identity, your core values, and the way people feel when they interact with your brand. And again, if you feel like this is too woo-woo, I want you to go back to the idea that you're actually starting a relationship that is building a connection with your potential customers. And then marketing is how you do it. So think about branding as the strategy, and then marketing as the tactics, how we are going to tell people about who you are, your business, your product, your service, and how we get them to care. So that's probably the biggest way to think about that difference between branding and marketing. So on that note, just a quick heads up, this is what the roadmap of our first 6 sessions are going to look like. So obviously we're here, this is month 1. We're going to talk about your core identity. And then you'll see as we progress through the first part of the year, we're going to talk about storytelling, positioning, website strategy and content, social media, and a little bit, we'll take a little time out and do some psychology of branding as well. So on that note, real quick, I just want to introduce Krystal, because we're going to talk to Krystal in just a little bit. Krystal, would you mind just coming off screen or off mute and just introducing yourself real quick?
Yeah, hi. Hi, Meg, and thank you for introducing me. So I am brand designer. I've worked with many brands, small and bigger, and I'm specialized in strategy, building the strategy that is tailored to each company, and applying it visually, but also on social media, and measuring the impact that all actions have. Yeah.
That's great. I'm excited. And I've got some questions for Krystal. We'll tap her in just a second. So thank you for being here, Krystal. I'm excited you're here.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here too. Thanks.
So here's the first question to kind of kick us off. I'm going to go through a couple of key points for us in a second. But what I want to do first is a little bit of a mindset check. Are you ready, eager, and willing to build a stronger brand? And this is where you as a leader, I want you to really kind of do a little self-check, self-awareness, because I think sometimes, like I said, we get really caught in the tactics of the, who's doing what where, and we either don't give ourselves enough time or energy to really think about what it means to build a stronger brand. So I just want you to do a check-in on your mindset, especially if you're a leader of an organization. I want you to think about, have I given time? Do I have the right people in the right seats that can help us think about building a stronger brand? So that's probably point 1 that I just love to emphasize at the top of everything is, are you open to a conversation about building a brand? And what's the relationship with your brand and how you talk about your brand with your team as well? So let's get started here. I have 4 points, and I have a couple of things just to note kind of about the way I go about presentations. I have a couple of, I call them aha moments. Aha moments are like that one thing that it's like, if you're in Starbucks an hour from now and you're trying to remember something, I want you to remember this, a couple aha moments. And then I have a couple of practices that we can implement together today. I'll probably give you 60 seconds or 90 seconds to start a first draft of something. But keep that in mind, that there's a little bit of interaction. You don't have to come on camera or ask any questions live until the end. just more of a personal practice for you. And then the last thing is I use a lot of examples from large international companies. So they may not be companies of your size or scale. I use them internationally just because I think it's a language we can all speak regardless of where we are in the world. So the first thing I want you to think about as a brand is I want you to think of yourself and your business or your organization as a brand. And here's what that means. And Krystal's going to talk about this as well. But I want your aha moment here is that your brand is more than your logo. And I think that that's a big misconception, is that we always think branding is the way something looks, whether it's the logo, whether it's the brand name and how it's styled, whether it's fonts, colors, you name it. And I want you to really think about your brand or your business as more than a logo. It's what it's like to experience your brand, what it looks like to somebody else, like who's the third party that's watching, who's the potential client that is perceiving, reading, watching, whether it's in your emails or maybe on social media. And then it's also the promise that you create. So many times we've been in situations where we've had an interaction with a brand where we might have been disappointed. Maybe it was a bad customer service experience. Maybe it was a good customer service experience. Whatever it is, I want you to think about the promise that you're creating. So when you think about brands and your brand specifically, 3 keywords to think about is experience, perception, and promise. So 3 notes here is that every business has a brand, whether you intended to do that or not. And that goes back to how's your brand showing up consistently? A great example of this is a company that sends really sporadic emails. We've all been on those email lists where we're like, I get an email from them like 3 weeks in a row, and then I don't get an email from them for like another 6 months. It's like, where were they? I want you to think about that, and whether you've intended it or not, if that is you, or if you've experienced that, you're creating a brand, whether you meant to do it or not. So just think about that. Again, that's kind of the experience of what it's like to interact with your brand. And then I also want you to think about how it shapes how people feel and engage with you. So sometimes what happens, obviously, I've been a business owner for 10 years. Our team, myself included, obviously, is very committed to making sure that we are very relationship-based. That's an incredibly important part of how I want clients or potential clients to engage with us. I want them to feel that relationship component. So that when I think about how I want people to feel, I want them to feel invited to the table. I want them to feel like they can ask any question. I don't want them to feel like they're wrong to give us notes or feedback. It's all about what it's like, how you want somebody to feel or engage with you. And then I want you to actually think about the best place to start actually is thinking about some strong personal and business brands that you might like, just maybe you're watching from afar, or also brands that you tend to spend money with, because I think that how we choose to spend our money is incredibly important. And so I just want you to think of some strong personal and business brands. Obviously, there are a couple here that are great global examples. Patagonia is one of my favorite examples to talk about because there is such a clear brand, not only visually, but also culturally and core values wise. And we'll talk about core values in a second, but I just want you to think about some brands that you really like and that you really connect with. Most likely you're connecting with them on a personal level. You've either loved the experience of their website, maybe they did have great customer service, or you love reading their blog, whatever it is. I want you to think about brands that you're drawn to. So this is one of the first practices here of like, this is all great. How do we actually put it into play? And I think this might be a great question for you and your team next week, maybe the next team meeting, if you do monthly team meetings, is if somebody described your brand, so you could always put in the word business or organization there. If someone described your brand, your business or organization, in 3 words, what would they say? And I think a great practice of this is if anyone's a Netflix user and you've ever let the screen fade, it will always promo new shows, movies, whatever, and it always gives 3 words to describe whatever that is. It's the exact same thing. It's what's the brand of that particular movie, show, experience. So this is just a question that I would ask of each of you is how, if you had to describe your brand in 3 words, how would you do it? And what would your team say about it as well? This is always a really fun activity. We've done this with a couple of clients for offsites. It's a great activity to do and to put all the words up there. Maybe everyone answers the questions privately, and then they put you put all of everyone's words up on the whiteboard, screen, what have you, and just see where the consistencies are and where the differences. In a perfect world, there are a lot of similar words or feelings or perceptions. If there's a great difference in the words, that might be a signal to you as the leader. Culturally, why is that? How do we get there? Second piece here, so this is 2 of 4, remember. So second thing is I want you to really think about your core identity, which is your mission, your vision, and your values. So again, this is kind of in the scheme of marketing, think of the branding as the foundation to build up from. So aha moment here is your brand's foundation starts with your mission, your vision, and your values. And again, this can be one of the pieces that might feel a little woo-woo, might feel like something that you're like, we'll do it next year. But in reality, I feel like this is the direction that your team might need, and it might be the direction that your clients or your potential clients are looking for. And when we work with clients on these pieces, we often call them North Stars because they are meant to be those guiding lights, those things by which we steer the ship. So obviously, there are a lot of ways to define these mission, vision, and values. What I want you to think about is just trying to keep it as simple as possible. So your mission is very clear. This is literally like just the soup and nuts here. So what you do and why you do it. This can be, we sell this product to these customers because of this. You can get your mission into 1 sentence very easily. The vision is where you're headed and the impact you want to make. So a lot of times when I talk to clients about this, I always think of like, the vision is like why we choose to help save the world, regardless of if you're a nonprofit or a for-profit. The vision's like why we save the world, and the mission is how we do it. So the mission is literally like what we are doing every day to get to that point. So vision will probably feel a little bit more, out there. I say spacey, and what I really mean is it's a larger idea. Mission is literally like your sneakers on the pavement, what you're doing every day. And then values, I want you to think about your values as 2 things, what you stand for and what helps you make decisions. So great, my favorite example, Patagonia, we're in the business to save our home planet. So for a mission, obviously. So in thinking about that as the mission, I want you to think about, in the scheme of Patagonia, how we've all kind of associated their work of sustainability, care for the planet, care for ourselves. And that ends up being the way the way in which you make decisions and then what you choose to stand for. And I think when it comes to values, it's very simple. I think you can come up with 3 core values. You can come up with 5 core values. Anything that feels very tangible for you and your organization. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set a timer. We call this a think fast. I'm going to set a timer. What I might do just for the sake of time, because I want to make sure we have enough time to talk to Krystal, I might just do it at 60 seconds. I'm going to set my phone timer, but I want you to jot down. Don't go to your website. Don't go to your marketing materials. I want you to just think about whether you can write down your mission, your vision, and your values without looking at anything. Okay, so I'm going to set the timer 60 seconds. just to brainstorm. And what's great about this is if you have them, wonderful. If you don't have them, why not? And if you're just starting out, what are you thinking about when it comes to your mission, vision, and your values? So I'm just going to set the timer for 60 seconds, real quick. Here we go. And just pen to paper, type whatever you need to do. Just scratch out anything you can come up with when it comes to mission, vision, and values. All right, 30 seconds. All right, just take a final 5. I would love to hear, all right, that's time. I would love to hear, even in the Q&A session at the end of this, I'd love to hear, if, you don't have to share anything you're not willing to share, but I'm just curious if you do have mission, vision, and values, and if you could remember it, or if you can't. So I'm always curious about that. A great example too, just real quick, is we're working with a client who is a public relations agency, and they are going through a renaming process. And we're going through their discovery process. And the thing that they're really concerned about is making sure that their new name and some of their new messaging is very values driven. She wants to talk about their services, that's always a part of their messaging, but she really wants to make it clear that we are a values-driven organization. So I think we've experienced brands like that. We know them when we see them. So it's just another option to think about for your own brand and how you interact with your values. So number 3 of 4, I want you to think about your unique value prop, UVP. So this might be a little bit of a throwback lesson to anyone who's been to business school or has had any kind of marketing training. I like to throw it in here, even though I know it might be a refresher, just because a lot of times we get so in the weeds of doing the work that we kind of forget what we're doing and why we're doing it. And again, it's that foundational level of branding, which will then become really important to how you show up in marketing as well. So I want you to think about your UVP, your unique value prop, as what's going to set you apart. And I really want you to get clear on why customers should choose you. So as an example here, Slack, I don't know how many people use the platform Slack for team communications, but when it comes down to it, their UVP is be more productive at work with less effort. So I think we're Slack users. I read that and I'm like, yeah, like that's exactly why we bought them, and how we interact with the platform is to be more productive as a team with a lot less emails, texts, you name it, a lot less effort. So how you get here, again, you might have some of this information kind of tucked away, but I really want you to think about who your audience is and what's their biggest pain point, how you solve that pain point, and how you can talk about it in a way that's going to be compelling. What's the language? What are the words that you choose that's going to get people out of their seats for your product or your service? So a great example here, and we've done this internally as a team, is we've looked at our 3 best clients, and best obviously you can define it in your own way, but we define it as our favorite relationships, like the people we love to work with, the people that we don't like roll our eyes at when we have a call to come up. Like they're people that like, I am excited to talk to you. We think about who our top 3 favorite clients are, and we backed it up. We're like, how did they come to us? And what was the real problem that we're solving for them? What is their pain point? What's the pain point that they came to us for? And how are we solving it for them? And what's great is if your contact form on your website has a form that they need to fill out before they interact with you, you can ask them, what's your pain point? What are you experiencing? What's slowing you down? You can phrase it in whatever way is great for you. But a lot of times clients will tell you the pain point. You just have to be listening to them. And so I think this is also a great opportunity too to survey your current clients. Quick survey, and you could actually ask these two questions. What's the biggest pain point you've experienced maybe before working with us? And how are we helping you solve it? It's a great opportunity to kind of collaborate, get some feedback and notes from clients, and then on the flip side, help you shape your UVP and then also shape then your branding and your marketing strategy. So I'll skip the free write in here, but your homework is that I'd love you to think about taking, even just for yourselves after this call, set the timer, and in 60 seconds, we call this a free write, 60 seconds, write a rough draft of your UVP in one sentence. Might be a long time to write one sentence, so I would say just do a brain dump, and then your homework is how are we going to whittle that draft down to one? That's the whole game. How can you get it into a be more productive at work with less effort type sentence? The last point here that I have before we talk to Krystal is how I really want you to think about how you're going to position your brand, again, your business, your organization, your brand, to compete, because that's why we're here, right? To compete in the best way that you know how. So this is what we call positioning. Again, this might be a throwback to anybody who's been to business school, majored in business, you name it. I just like to keep it in here because it makes things very simple to understand. And so positioning is about where your brand sits in your customer's eyes, right? So you on your own, where you sit, but then also where you sit in the scheme of other competitors. So I want you to think in the scheme of you and your competition, how do you want your brand to be perceived? Is it based on price? Are you a luxury service? Do they pay top dollar? Are you known to be affordable? Benefit. So do we really hook our wagon to the star of we are the fastest solution? Are we the easiest partner to work with? Third is audience. So this is, are you providing a product or service that's appealing to a lot of people, or do you serve a very specific niche? And then the fourth, which obviously has come up a little bit in this, is how do your values play in? Where do your values compete in the market? A lot of values that we talk about today, sustainability, ethics, innovation. Where do your values fit in comparison to your competitors? So I have again, another international example here, Tesla versus Toyota. We've got the Tesla coming in as, a very innovative luxury brand, Toyota, very reliable, very affordable. So you can kind of see the differences just between those two. Something to think about, so maybe something to take to the team next week, is how do you want your brand to be perceived? So when you think about these four, is there one that stands out right now? And is that in alignment with your growth for this year? And do you need to make adjustments to your marketing and branding positioning based on your sales goals? So a couple of just aha moments to take back to your team here. Your brand is more than your visuals. A clear UVP is going to make you stand out. How you position yourself and how you own your space, we're going to help you tell a better story. And then next step, taking a look at your mission, vision, values, and UVP over the next month or so. So Krystal, you're up, my friend.
Yeah.
So I sent Krystal some questions. I'm going to look at them. I have my phone here. I'm looking at Krystal's questions on my phone. But Krystal, I know I think you sold yourself short a little bit. You've worked with some incredible brands, including Armani Beauty.
Yeah.
You've worked with incredible brands. I'm curious, in your general professional experience, what's been your professional experience building brands? How have clients responded to the conversation of branding? positively, negatively? What do you encounter when you talk branding with clients?
It really depends. It's really case by case. Some clients, like, they come in, they're Russian, they want a logo, they just see what is to see, because a brand is so much more than just a logo. It's intangible. You cannot really grasp it. Some compare it to like religion, because it activates the same areas in the brain than religion. So once like your customers are like really into your brand, like usually they're in for the long run. Where am I going with that? And so like
No,
it
you're
really
great.
depends
That's great.
on like their budget, their goals for the business, and how willing they are to like actually take the time to like develop their brand, because just like you were saying, brand is the identity of the business. And so the more you develop your identity, the more you know who you are as a business, who you want to talk to, and what actions you're going to take from there. So it gives you alignment, it gives you clarity as a business, and targeted actions are going to follow from this.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm curious on that note. One of my questions to you was, how do you define brand? And I might just double click it a little bit more to be like, how do you educate clients on the differences between branding and marketing? Because I'd imagine they probably come to you and they think it's marketing, but
Yeah.
you probably have to back it up a little bit to talk more strategy and branding.
Yeah. So usually I use like my little graphs, and then I show that like marketing is a part of branding, and branding is a part of the business. Um, and that marketing is more the actions that derive from actually working on building your core values, your mission, your purpose, and your identity as a business. So it's a process. It takes a little bit of time for some client to understand, but it's always like it's worth it, because as I was saying, like it's gonna give more clarity and power to all the actions that are gonna come from there.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, we have a variety of people on the call from a lot of places around the world. If someone is new to the conversation about branding, or maybe they're like, we haven't talked about this for years, we just got into doing the business, what are a couple of questions that they should start to think about when it comes to brand identity or branding as that foundational element?
I think the main question is who are we talking to? This is a little bit like marketing, like really defining your personas, your clients, and who you want to talk to, because from there you're gonna know more who they are and who you want to be according to who they are too, because you're gonna try to like come to their level and speak their language too. It's about adaptation, adaptability. The second question would be, who are we and what message do we want to convey?
Yeah.
Um, and then, yeah, I think just starting with defining clearly like those two elements are going to be like crucial to developing the brand further.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we talked earlier this week, you were emphasizing the importance of strategy and thinking strategically. Can you just kind of talk through what you mean by that and why brands need to think strategically about this part of the process?
Well, what I mean is there's so many ways to convey a message. You want to attract the right target, and this goes by like analyzing your market, analyzing your customers, understanding them, understanding what they want, and then also as a business, like looking at what you want as a business. What are your goals? What do you see yourself innovating in, for example? And does it make sense for you to innovate in that direction. So it's like really mixing these three aspects and coming to like a point where like all these three fields are taken into consideration, if it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's the main point of strategy, I would say.
Do you find, I mean, I have my opinion about it, but I'm curious, like,
Yeah.
do you find that clients like to have that strategy conversation, or are they just like hungry to get into the tactics?
Yeah, most of the time they're like they just want to have like their material ready. They want to like just go. So what I usually do is like I let them go, and then, well, they'll come back and they'll be like, yeah, we need to modify certain things, and then we can start strategizing a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah, I have the same experience a lot of times. You know, obviously we focus a lot on the messaging side of things, and oftentimes they come and it's a little bit of an SOS, like we just got to get the website up, or I need these marketing materials. And a lot of times we need to back it up a little bit to ask the questions you're talking about, which is, you know, who are they going to? What are the pain, you know, what's their pain? Who are they? What, you know, how do we need to show up? Is it really a one pager? Like, is your audience really going to use a one pager? And just allowing some time to have that strategy conversation first.
Yeah, definitely.
What's your relationship like, or how do you use mission, vision, and values when you're designing?
Well, they're part of like what I define as brand essence. So I define like a couple pillars that are important in developing the brand. So there's the brand identity, where you find in it like the brand persona, and there is also like the brand essence. That is where like I put more like the purpose, mission, values for the main ones. They're the spirit of the brand, and that's what's gonna give like the tone, the message, and yeah, the way like the company talks internally, but also externally to like their customers and to their teams inside.
Yeah, I think spirit is a good word to use for that. Because it's why you know, it's why you show up, why you do what you do, and how you want to work with people.
Yeah, I agree.
Do you like to see, obviously you approach it from a creative designer perspective, graphic designer perspective. Do you like to see mission, vision, and values before you work with a client on their visual identity?
Yeah, yeah, because it's part of like, yeah, just like I was saying, like the pillar of branding.
Yeah.
It's one of the pillars that is, yeah, most important.
Two more questions for you, and then I want to open it up to the crowd of friends here.
Yeah.
What do you think is one thing that leaders or teams miss or get wrong about branding or even marketing per se?
I think it's just rushing into like tactics, just like you were saying, and then like taking hasty decision when not taking the time to like really build and nurture like the brand. That's the most recurring problem that I see.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with you too. It is that that rushing, that sense of like we need all this stuff yesterday.
Yeah.
So I think that's, you know, in my world, I think a lot of times it's like we're working with a client right now as they're kind of planning for a trade show in June. So, you know, what are the materials? What's the identity? What's the messaging, so that we have enough time to actually put together the tactics for how they're going to show up, you know, 4 months from now versus next week.
Yeah.
My last question for you is really kind of celebrating your work and your success, and just sharing like what's your favorite success story when it comes to a branding client. Like maybe it was somebody that was very hesitant, or maybe somebody that you worked with at like transformation.
Yeah, I just love to see like my clients' presence, online presence, like grow in a coherent and consistent way, like when like the actions are clear, it makes sense, it's coherent, it attracts like the right community or people. And yeah, it's gonna impact also like their actions, just like I was saying. I had clients who decided to like start live streams or launch their books, and then we just meet after that and see the results. I just love to see like positive impact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, last thing before you go, if somebody is going to go back to their team on Monday and kind of just do a little bit of a reset on some of the elements we talked about, what's the one thing that you think that they should think about first?
I'm trying to see what's their goal for as a business,
Mm,
and how can they like tie it to their brand.
yeah.
That would be the first question, I think.
Yeah. That's a good, yeah, I think that's the biggest thing we always start with too is, instead of getting into the nuts and bolts, like what's the goal when it comes to either the brand perception, maybe it's even the sales goal, maybe it's even growing your team goal, like what's the big, some one way we phrase it is, what's today look like a year from now for your company?
Yeah.
So that there's, a little bit of, we understand the overarching why and the big goal.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I think I'm going to open it up for some questions. It's time for your questions, but before I do that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I just wanted to give you a heads up. I'd love to do this again next month, and I'd love to use next month to talk about the power of storytelling in branding. So how storytelling helps your brand story obviously builds that emotional connection, and how to leverage it across marketing channels, and then how to utilize storytelling for your sales and marketing, obviously, how you can use that as a force for good. So like I said, I'm going to stop sharing here, and then Krystal, if you can kind of hang out for a few, I'd love for you to be available for questions. So Doug and Jem, if you might kind of help me monitor this, and we can answer some questions. It looks like the first hand I see is Francis.
Yeah.
Francis, can you tell us where you are in the world?
I'm here in Los Angeles, California. Great presentation. I love all the details that you provided. It's a lot of wealth information there. So my question is probably more marketing than it is branding per se, but we're all pretty busy, and some of us are sole proprietors rather than have an organization behind us. And given that, what is the high return methods of getting your brand out there consistently? Podcasts, blogs, newsletters. If I could get some insights from you, Meg, and Krystal on high value, where I should spend my time, creating my consistent persona.
Yeah, I'll respond, and then I'll open it to Krystal too. I think my question for you, Francis, would be, well, first of all, it's different for everybody. So I think like reading an article and getting ideas is a great place to start. But I might back it up and think about, and this is I do this a lot. I think about, who are our best relationships, who are our most high value clients, and where did they come from? Was it because, if I look at my top 3 or top 5 and I see that 2 of the 3 came from this one marketing event that I went to, then I'm going to keep showing up there. If, I look at the last, if I tend to be more of a transactional business and I'm like, well, I did post on LinkedIn and I had, 5 DMs about this product, all of which led and converted to a sale, then I'm going to lean into that. I really love when people figure out what's worked for them in the past and they continue to lean into that. I think if you're going to introduce anything new, you know, like starting a podcast, like even being a guest on a podcast, even, I think to that note, a lot of times clients come and they're like, I need to start a podcast. And you're like, that's that's a long road. It's hard work and it's a long road. Is there an alternative to maybe saying, can I start showing up on podcasts? You know, can I find a list of 3 to 5 podcasts that I can reach out to versus thinking I need to start a podcast from scratch? So I would probably say lean into what you know has worked. And then maybe if you want to try something new, try it on a small scale and just kind of test and iterate over. I would give yourself a quarter, I'd give yourself 2 quarters. But my technique is let's figure out what's worked in the past and really lean heavy into that. That should be 80% of your effort.
Great, thanks a lot.
Yeah, Krystal, what else would you say?
Yeah, I would add that like it's important to like understand the pain points of your clientele and really dive in what they value at the core and then take your communication actions from there because that's what's gonna resonate more with them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would say, yes, I agree with the pain points for sure. I feel like sometimes what happens with marketing messaging a lot of times is that we dance around the pain point or the problem. Like we come up with kind of fluffy language instead of just naming it. So if you know that, you know, your 3 biggest clients all had this one problem, like how can you actually name that problem in a very clear, concise way and just name it? Because I think there are probably a lot more people out there that will identify it when you actually just name the problem versus kind of dancing around it with fluffy copy. Just name it. It's always a pain point in a subject line of an email is always it's always a good one because someone will scroll and be like, that's me, I'm going to open. So just some tips and tricks there. Any other questions? I'm kind of scrolling through to see hands. Doug, do you have questions or comments?
One of the real challenges I've seen is that people have a hard time seeing their own stuff. So as I was onboarding a new member earlier this week, looking at the LinkedIn profile, it was totally different than the direction that they're headed. And there was some idea that it was off, but not anywhere near what you probably would see. How do you get people to see reality?
It's a loaded question, Doug. That's a big one. I mean, the thing that I always advise too is, you know, asking them, creating an environment where team members can be honest about what they see as well. Because a lot of times team members see things and they're afraid to say something. And, you know, I've seen meetings where it's like, well, yeah, I didn't really, I realized that logo looked like a competitor's and I just didn't say anything. So I would say, first of all, tapping the people on your team, especially the newest members of your team as well, because they're going to see things that you don't see, especially if you've been in your brand and your business for a number of years. The newest person into your organization is going to see things. And so I think at that point, it's creating a place where somebody can be honest and upfront, or you can get notes or feedback in a way that's, you know, not going to make somebody feel like they're being, you know, they're being targeted. I think the other thing too is, you know, going, you know, almost building your own, I don't want to say board of advisors, but maybe having 2 or 3 people, maybe within your industry, who you can go to and ask them, you know, take a look at the website. Like, what am I missing? Or what's off? Or what needs clarification? I think just getting, you know, being able to do that for each other is going to be helpful, just to be able to almost help each other do an audit per se. We did an audit for one of the PR agencies that we work for, and she was like, I totally didn't see that. And we're business you know, we do a lot of business together. We did it very casually for each other. And, you know, it didn't have to be a laundry list of a million things we had to fix, but maybe just 2, 3, 4 things that are like, this, you might have missed this because you look at it so often.
We're at the top of the hour. I'd like to give each of you just 30 seconds to do a wrap up. I want to emphasize something that Krystal said that I thought was really essential that we sometimes miss, in addition to what you just said, Meg, and that is, who are you trying to attract? Who is the person that you're talking to? You know, that piece is often very missing, right? In our own thinking, we get wrapped up in God knows what, and we forget who that person is that we're speaking with, and who they are, what they care about, what their values are, and because there's so many people. I think, Meg, you said something that was very related to it, is when you're talking about who are your best clients, where do they come from, understanding it at that level. Most people say, well, you ask, well, who's your customer? And they give that laundry list of everybody, including all those bad ones that you roll your eyes on. So understanding the best ones is so critically important. So thank you both for some really insightful comments today. How would you like to wrap up, Meg?
Well, Krystal, do you want to, like, I want to give you a second just to say, you know, react to Doug, because I think what he, like, how he kind of pulled that quote from you is so smart. So I want to give you a second to react and maybe just wrap up.
Yeah, well, I think that's what businesses should do at their core, you know, it's like really look at their customers and then try to understand them and try to build this conversation with them to really like understand their pain points and how they can like build themselves as a brand, but also help the customer by building the brand. So it should be like, how can I say, like not a fusion, but like it should be organic. If that,
Yeah. And on that note too, I think like it's such a good point to just look at your current mix of clients, like just do a timeout and, you know, look at here's who we serve. Here's, you know, where our revenue comes from so we can keep doing this work. And how did they come into our pipeline? How long did it take to get them as a client? Where do we align on values? What is their pain point? Like almost doing just doing a timeout with your team to kind of just write down facts about people. You don't have to make any judgments, just write some facts of how they came to you, because I think that's going to help you figure out the foundational branding pieces and then the marketing pieces moving forward.
Thank you so much to both of you, and we look forward to this conversation on a regular basis. A lot of what was discussed today was somewhat similar to the sales conversation yesterday. This point about when you're in a sales conversation, make sure you're asking questions, that you're in the mode of getting in their head, in their shoes, and what their needs are. And that's very hard for people to do, to have the ability to translate. And so I don't know what the tricks are, but I know hanging out with really smart marketing people like Meg and Krystal is definitely one of them, because they keep pulling, they provide their perspective, they know what's important, and highly recommend, if you don't have somebody that you can trust on the marketing side, here's 2 great examples of people you need to speak with. Thanks both of you for the program today, and we'll close it out now. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
bye.
Take care. Thank you. Great job.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Have a great Valentine's Day, everybody.
Same to you, Doug.
Same to you, Doug. Happy Valentine's Day.
It's